Part 1. The Price of a Daughter. I was 3 years old when my biological parents decided I was a luxury they couldn't afford, or rather, a mistake they needed to correct. In their eyes, my only crime was being born a girl. I don't remember the exact day they gave me away, but my adoptive mother, Elena, never hid the truth from me. When she and my adoptive father adopted me, the paperwork was signed with a chilling lack of hesitation by my biological parents, Arthur and Linda. Elena told me that when they handed me over, Linda didn't even look back. She was already pregnant again, praying for the son they desperately wanted. Growing up, I felt the phantom ache of that rejection, but Elena and David filled my life with so much love, warmth, and security that the ache eventually faded into background noise. They invested in my education, supported my passions, and watched proudly as I graduated from university and secured a high-paying job as a corporate data analyst. By 23, I was independent, financially stable, and completely disconnected from the people who shared my DNA. Until 3 weeks ago. It started with a message on LinkedIn from a profile with no photo. "Maya, it's your mother, Linda. We need to talk. It's urgent." I stared at the screen, my heart hammering against my ribs. I ignored it. But then came the emails, the missed calls from unknown numbers, and finally, a certified letter delivered to my apartment. They hadn't tracked me down to apologize. They hadn't tracked me down out of guilt. They tracked me down because they had a problem, and they figured I was the solution. The letter explicitly stated that my younger brother, Leo, the golden son they had traded my existence for, had been accepted into a prestigious private academy overseas. The tuition, boarding, and living expenses amounted to a staggering sum. They were short exactly $40,000. The audacity written in that elegant cursive font was breathtaking. They claimed that as family, it was my filial duty to ensure my brother's future was secured. After all, I was making good money now, right? Part 2. The Invitation. Against my better judgment, and after a long discussion with Elena, I agreed to meet them. Not because I intended to give them a single dime, but because I wanted to look into the eyes of the people who abandoned a toddler and see if there was even a shred of humanity left in them. We agreed to meet at an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. I arrived early, wearing a sharp-tailored blazer, my hair pulled back. I wanted to look every bit the successful professional they clearly wanted to exploit. When they walked in, I recognized them instantly from the old photographs in my adoption file. Arthur looked older, his hair graying, but he carried an air of arrogant entitlement. Linda was dressed in clothes that looked expensive but slightly frayed at the edges. And between them stood Leo. Leo was 20 years old, dressed in designer labels from head to toe, looking bored and scrolling on his phone. The golden boy. The reason I was discarded. "Maya," Linda gasped, pressing a hand to her chest as if she were a grieving mother finally reunited with her long-lost child. She reached out for a hug, but I stepped back, pulling out my chair and sitting down. "Let's skip the pleasantries," I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion. "You said it was urgent." Arthur cleared his throat, looking slightly offended by my coldness, but he sat down anyway. Leo didn't even look up from his phone until the waiter arrived. They ordered expensive appetizers and wine without checking the prices, clearly assuming I would be picking up the tab. "We are just so proud of the woman you've become," Linda began, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "We always knew you would do great things, Maya. That's why we made the sacrifice we did back then. We knew we couldn't give you the life you deserved." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "You didn't make a sacrifice for me, Linda. You gave me away because you wanted a boy. And looking at the letter you sent, it seems you actually sold your rights to me to clear your own debts at the time. Let's not rewrite history." Arthur's face flushed a deep, angry crimson. Now see here, young lady. We are your parents. You wouldn't even be on this earth if it weren't for us. We raised Leo to have the finest things, but things have been tight lately. Leo has a brilliant future ahead of him in international business. He just needs a final push. $40,000 is a drop in the bucket for someone in your position. Leo finally looked up, smirking. Yeah, sis. Don't be selfish. It's for my future. Family helps family. Part 3, the envelope. The sheer entitlement in the room was suffocating. They sat there, eating expensive food they couldn't afford, demanding $40,000 from a daughter they threw away like trash, all so their spoiled son could live out a fantasy. Family helps family, I repeated slowly, letting the words hang in the air. That's an interesting philosophy. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a thick, heavy manila envelope. I placed it squarely in the middle of the table, right between the bread basket and Arthur's wine glass. Linda's eyes lit up with immediate greed. She reached for it, assuming it was a certified check or a bank draft for the full amount. Open it, I said quietly. Arthur was the one who grabbed it, tearing the seal open with eager, trembling fingers. He pulled out the stack of documents inside. Leo leaned in, his smirk widening, expecting to see a row of zeros on a check. But as Arthur read the first page, the color completely drained from his face. Linda leaned over his shoulder, her eyes widening in horror. Inside the envelope was not a check. It was a comprehensive legal and financial dossier compiled by a private investigator I had hired the moment they... What is this? Linda whispered, her voice trembling. That, I said, leaning forward, is a detailed record of your financial history over the last 10 years. It includes the foreclosure notices on your previous home, the 2 bankruptcies you filed under a shell company, and most importantly, the official academic transcripts for Leo. Leo stiffened. According to those certified documents from his current university, I continued, looking directly at my biological brother, Leo hasn't been accepted into an elite overseas academy. He's actually on academic probation and is about to be expelled for failing 3 classes last semester. The Overseas Academy is a fake acceptance letter he forged to get $40,000 out of you to pay off his local gambling debts. Leo? Linda shrieked, turning to her son. Is this true? Leo's face went entirely pale. He opened his mouth to lie, but the certified university documents staring back at him from the table offered no room for denial. Part 4, Total Emancipation. But I wasn't finished. Keep reading, Arthur, I commanded. Arthur flipped to the final section of the packet. It was a formal, legally binding cease and desist order drafted by my family's attorney, accompanied by a restraining order petition. If you, your wife, or your son attempt to contact me, my adoptive parents, or my place of employment ever again, this entire dossier, including the evidence of Leo's financial fraud and your own past illegal financial dealings, will be handed directly to the authorities and the university board, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. The restaurant around us seemed to vanish. There was only the stunned, terrified silence of 3 scammers caught in their own web. I stood up, picking up my purse. I looked down at the 3 people who shared my blood but absolutely none of my respect. You threw me away 20 years ago because you thought a daughter was worthless, I said, looking Linda and Arthur dead in the eyes. You valued a son who ended up destroying you from the inside out. I owe you nothing. Not a penny, not a drop of respect, and certainly not a future. I tossed a $50 bill onto the table to cover my own drink. Enjoy the dinner, I said. It's the last thing you'll ever get from me. I turned on my heel and walked out of the restaurant into the cool evening air. As the heavy glass doors closed behind me, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. I pulled out my phone and called Dilemma. "Hey, Mom," I said, a genuine smile breaking across my face. "I'm on my way home."